Let's be honest, folks. The news cycle moves so fast these days, it's easy to get distracted by, well, whatever horrifying thing Elon Musk tweeted this morning. But while we're all glued to the never-ending circus of social media, there's a quiet storm brewing. The US economy. Yeah, that thing we rely on for, well, everything. And let's just say it's not exactly thriving. We're talking record debt, soaring prices, and an economic system teetering on the brink. So buckle up, because in this video we're diving deep into the 15 shocking truths about the US economy that they really don't want you to know. Alright, let's kick things off with a number so big it's practically incomprehensible. $34 trillion. That, my friends, is the current US national debt. And before you ask, yes, it's horrifyingly huge. The interest payments alone on this colossal debt are reaching record highs. Every year, the debt balloons, fueled by government spending and a reluctance to actually, address the problem. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, except the train is full of money and we're all tied to the tracks. Let's face it, times are tough. A staggering 60% of Americans are currently living paycheck to paycheck. That's right, folks, almost 2/3 of the country is one unexpected car repair away from financial ruin. Now you might think, well, those are probably just the minimum wage workers, right? Wrong, we're talking teachers, nurses, firefighters, people who are supposedly the backbone of this country. These are folks with college degrees and steady jobs who still can't seem to scrape by. Wages have stagnated while the cost of living has skyrocketed. The American dream is turning into a nightmare for millions, and frankly, it's an embarrassment. Remember the good old days when you could walk into a grocery store without emptying your entire bank account? Yeah, me neither. Since 2020, food prices have increased by over 25%. We're talking basic staples like eggs, milk, and bread. The culinary holy trinity of a balanced breakfast are now more expensive than a night out in downtown Manhattan. Families are being forced to choose between putting food on the table and paying their rent. They're resorting to cutting back on meals, buying cheaper, less nutritious food, or relying on food banks just to get by. This isn't the sign of a thriving economy, it's a symptom of a system that's failing its people. It's time to stop pretending everything is fine and start demanding solutions. Ah, the American dream. The white picket fence, the two-car garage, the crippling mortgage that forces you to eat ramen noodles for the rest of your life. But hey, at least you own a home, right? Well, for millennials and Gen Z, even that dream is fading faster than a tan line in January. Over the last decade, average home prices have doubled, and good luck getting a mortgage with these interest rates. Crammed apartments, living with roommates well into their 30s, and the crushing weight of student loan debt. Homeownership is quickly becoming a pipe dream, and the American dream is starting to look more like a dystopian nightmare. Remember those halcyon days when a trip to the gas station didn't feel like a visit to a luxury boutique? Neither do I. Gas prices have been on a wilder ride than a roller coaster designed by Elon Musk after a six-pack of Red Bull. One minute, they're soaring higher than a SpaceX rocket. Again, sorry, Elon. The next, they're dipping lower than a politician's approval rating. High fuel costs have a ripple effect throughout the entire economy. They drive up the cost of transportation, which in turn increases the price of, well, everything. We're all in this volatile, unpredictable, and frankly, terrifying ride together. Remember playing Monopoly as a kid and that feeling of smug satisfaction when you drove all your opponents into bankruptcy? Yeah, well, the real world isn't quite as fun. In fact, it's downright terrifying, especially with the current rate of bankruptcies. Major corporations, the ones we thought were too big to fail, are dropping like flies in a bug zapper convention. Retail giants, tech startups, even banks, nobody is safe from the economic reaper. And let's not forget about personal bankruptcies, which are also skyrocketing. People are drowning in debt, struggling to make ends meet, and ultimately being forced to declare financial defeat. This isn't just a statistic, it's a human tragedy. Remember the thrill of a Saturday afternoon spent browsing your favorite store? The joy of trying on clothes, testing gadgets? Well, wave goodbye to those days. The retail apocalypse is here. Over 10,000 stores will close in 2025. Malls are becoming ghost towns. Next time you shop online, think of the struggling retail workers. Remember when Made in America meant something? When American factories churned out products that were the envy of the world? Yeah, those days are gone, folks, about as gone as a politician's promise during an election year. U.S. manufacturing is currently at its weakest point in decades. We've become alarmingly reliant on imports, outsourcing our jobs and our industrial might to countries with lower wages and fewer environmental regulations. And what happens when you outsource your entire manufacturing base? Well, for starters, you become vulnerable to supply chain disruptions. It's time to reinvest in American manufacturing, bring back jobs, and rebuild our industrial base. Otherwise, we risk becoming a nation of consumers, completely dependent on other countries for the goods and services we need to survive. Remember those magical days of low interest rates, when you could finance a new car for the price of a latte and a croissant? Well, kiss those days goodbye because interest rates have skyrocketed. We're talking the highest interest rates in over 20 years. Suddenly that dream car is looking more like a financial albatross, and that home renovation loan feels like a one-way ticket to debt prison. But it's not just big-ticket items that are affected. Credit card interest rates are also through the roof, which means even everyday purchases are becoming more expensive. It's a vicious cycle of debt that's trapping millions of Americans in a financial black hole. The middle class, the backbone of America, the bedrock of our society, is crumbling faster than a stale cookie. Remember the time when a single income could support a family, buy a house, and maybe even afford a vacation once a year? Yeah, that's about as quaint and outdated as a rotary phone. Wages have remained stagnant for decades, while the cost of everything from housing to healthcare has skyrocketed. The result? Millions of families are being squeezed out of the middle class and forced into a precarious financial existence. The gap between the rich and the poor is widening faster than the Grand Canyon. It's time to address income inequality, raise the minimum wage, and create policies that support working families. Remember the 2008 financial crisis? The bank bailouts? The near collapse of the global economy? Bank failures are back, baby. Regional banks are struggling under bad loans and rising interest rates. It's like a slow-motion train wreck. The fear of another banking crisis is palpable. When banks fail, it erodes trust in the financial system. So, the next time you see a news report about a bank failure, don't just shrug it off. It's a canary in the coal mine. Ah, the credit card, that magical piece of plastic that allows us to buy things we can't afford, and then spend the rest of our lives paying for them. But what happens when that magic wears off, and we're left with a mountain of debt that seems insurmountable? Well, my friends, welcome to the $1 trillion credit card debt crisis. That's right, Americans owe over $1 trillion on their credit cards. The average American household with credit card debt owes over $6,000, and many are struggling to make even the minimum payments. It's a vicious cycle of debt that can have devastating consequences, leading to damaged credit scores, financial instability, and even bankruptcy. Use it wisely, or risk becoming another statistic in the $1 trillion credit card debt crisis. Ah, the simple pleasure of dining out, a time-honored tradition of overpaying for food that you could have made better at home. But what happens when that simple pleasure becomes a luxury only the wealthy can afford? Welcome to the era of outrageous restaurant prices, where a plate of pasta costs more than a week's worth of groceries. Restaurant prices are at an all-time high, and it's not just the fancy Michelin-starred establishments that are to blame. Even your local neighborhood diner is feeling the pinch, forced to raise prices due to soaring food costs, supply chain disruptions, and the ever-increasing cost of, well, everything. The days of spontaneous dinner dates and casual lunches are fading faster than your waiter's patience after you ask for the Wi-Fi password. The restaurant industry is facing a crisis, and unfortunately, it's the consumers who are left footing the bill. Ah, the simple pleasure of dining out, a time-honored tradition of overpaying for food you could make better at home. But what happens when that simple pleasure becomes a luxury only the wealthy can afford? Welcome to the era of outrageous restaurant prices. Even your local diner is feeling the pinch, forced to raise prices due to soaring food costs. The restaurant industry is facing a crisis and consumers are left footing the bill. Remember those motivational posters that say hang in there, it gets better? Well, they're lying, especially if you work in tech, finance, or retail, because the layoff epidemic is sweeping through those industries faster than a virus in a crowded elevator. Thousands of workers are being shown the door, their jobs sacrificed at the altar of corporate greed and economic uncertainty. It's a bloodbath out there, and the pink slips are flying faster than a toupee in a hurricane. The reality is far bleaker, with millions of Americans struggling to find work in an increasingly competitive and unforgiving job market. Because in this economic climate, job security is about as real as a unicorn riding a roller coaster powered by Elon Musk's ego. The US dollar is losing its grip on global dominance. The mighty dollar is showing signs of weakness. Countries are moving away from using the dollar for trade. Political instability and strong currencies like the euro and yuan are factors. The decline could impact our everyday lives. Higher inflation and expensive imports are possible. International travel could become costlier. Buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. So, there you have it, 15 shocking truths about the US economy that should have you seriously rethinking that online shopping spree you've got planned. The reality is, the economy is not as stable as the media wants you to believe. We're facing unprecedented challenges, from record debt to soaring inflation, and the consequences will be felt by all of us. But this isn't a time to panic. It's a time to prepare. Educate yourself about the economy, make informed financial decisions, and don't be afraid to demand better from our elected officials. Because in these uncertain times, knowledge is power, and a healthy dose of skepticism never hurt anyone.